Hey everyone, I'm going to talk about arguable thesis statements here in this lecture. Arguable thesis statements are really sort of the trajectory for the rest of your academic writing. You're likely going to have to make an argument. Certainly there may be some papers and some room for simply informative, exploratory papers or essays in other classes, but at least in an English class, if you're moving on to English 112 in particular, and especially if you decide to take that course with me, arguable thesis statements is really kind of where you want to keep all of your thesis statements housed. So the way that I want to kind of talk to you about arguable thesis statements is really through a bunch of examples. But before I go through any of those examples, I want to give you a structure. So really, any thesis statement needs to make a claim and it needs to have focal points. There's a very, classic thesis, which is one claim and 3 focal points. They're usually listed out in a list. And as you progress in your writing, as you progress in your education, you'll find that that is not the only way to write an arguable thesis statement. And we'll look at some examples today that kind of take on different formats. But as far as the way I teach it at the very basic level, I follow a claim and a focus. So you have your main argument and then you have your reason. When you're working on your thesis for this week, you certainly don't have to have 3 reasons in your thesis statement. You can think of reasons almost as like umbrella terms where, let's say you have one reason, but that might take up 2 or 3 body paragraphs to explain the reasons, or there are sub-reasons to that one reason. Broaden your minds a little bit and just know that a thesis statement can make some really broad claims in terms of focal points, but that doesn't mean those are the only body paragraphs that it could cover. So let's say you have a main argument and you have 3 reasons. You can use these to formulate your thesis statement essentially. So if we're looking at the example here about daylight savings time, the main argument is that daylight savings time should be abolished. Okay, so that's an example. Why? Those are your reasons. Why should daylight savings time be abolished? It disrupts the body's natural rhythm, it doesn't save any extra energy, and it actually costs some cities more money. So if we put all of that together, we can easily formulate a thesis statement that says something like daylight savings time should be abolished because it disrupts the body's natural rhythm, it doesn't save consumers any extra energy, and it can actually cost cities more money. Really, everything I just said. We can see that same structure here in example 2. Plastic bags should be banned in all grocery stores. Here are my 3 reasons. They cannot be effectively recycled. They are damaging to the environment. They cost a lot of energy to make. And we can put all of those together with the word because in between the argument and the reasons. Plastic bags should be banned in all grocery stores because they cost a lot of energy to make, and they cannot be effectively recycled, which means they inevitably pollute and damage our environment. Okay, so I changed it up a little bit in terms of those reasons, but you found all of them in that thesis statement. So what I want to do is click on this link here, identifying arguable thesis statements, and it's going to take me to just sort of like a little practice with answers that I think is important to go through, because there are thesis statements that are written that look like good thesis statements, but are actually problematic for a number of reasons, and I want to go through them. So here is an example thesis statement. Television has had a serious impact in today's society. Okay, so that is a claim. What is it missing, though? It's missing those focal points. It says television has had a serious impact in today's society. What is that serious impact? Is it serious in a good way? Is it serious in a bad way? It's a little bit too vague. It's really hard to narrow down or really nail down exactly what this argument is saying. So it's not detailed enough. There's no focal point to this thesis statement. Okay, so what about this? During a recent episode of Law and Order, 2 people were killed, 3 were stabbed, and 4 were badly beaten. That is just a summary. So you want to also make sure that when you're writing your thesis statement that you're not just summarizing someone else's ideas or saying something like, many researchers believe that, and then inserting a claim, because ultimately by beginning a sentence with many people believe, or many researchers believe, or have stated that, or something like that, research has shown, you're really actually just writing a statement of fact. So be careful with those. That really does happen more often than you would think. An evaluation of the benefits of Prozac. So one, this is not a complete sentence, but even if it were, it's like saying this essay is an evaluation of the benefits of Prozac. So are you evaluating it in terms of here are all the really positive benefits, or here's one benefit, but there's not very many, so we shouldn't take Prozac? Like, what is the argument for this paper? What is it that is the main idea of the paper? Yes, this is more it tells us the main idea, sure, but it doesn't give us the specific viewpoint of the author. That's the problem. This is more of a topic statement. Here is what this is going to be about. And you want to avoid pretty much those at all costs, as you see in number 4 here. In this essay, I'm going to talk about the potential problems if the administration restructures the Social Security program. So the problem with this is that, one, you don't want to say anything ever like, in this essay I am going to, or this paper will, etc., etc. You don't want to say what you plan on doing, you just want to do it. So, and then the other thing that's problematic about this is the potential problems. Well, that's also an example of something that's really vague and doesn't have any focal points. What are those problems? This thesis statement would sound better if it said, if the administration restructures the Social Security program, they could run into X, Y, and Z, and those would be those potential problems, which gives you more of the specifics of the author's viewpoint. Number 5, have you ever considered why people are so rude when they drive, especially at rush hour? So it alludes to an argument, rude people driving, rush hour, but it's a question, and the nature of a thesis statement is that it's not a question, it's a statement. So make sure that you do not have any need to end your thesis statement with a question mark. If you're asking a question in your thesis, then it is not a thesis statement. It will need revision. Christopher Reeves' physical disability has not prevented him from becoming an advocate for research on spinal cord injury, and his story should be made into a book. Okay, so here is a decent thesis statement. We have an argument, we have an idea, we know where the author is going to go. It looks like they're going to be using these ideas to back up the rest of their paper, or they're going to be using additional details to back up the thesis statement in the rest of their paper. And there are a couple of other examples that I feel as if I would be beating a dead horse, so to speak, if I read them. So I'll definitely encourage you guys to reach out and check out these example thesis statements. I truly feel that thesis statements are something most of you have a handle on, but you've seen so many different examples of thesis statements in your lifetimes, and you have probably seen some example thesis statements that really aren't thesis statements. So I hope that if you just follow this guideline, you'll be able to come up with a thesis. And of course, if you have questions, definitely let me know via email. If you need help working on coming up with an effective thesis statement for your argument and for your ideas, I'm happy to help you do that. Remember, your thesis statement is due this week, and we're going to talk more about it. Your thesis statement that's due this week, again, is revisable. It's a working thesis. I do not expect that it is your most perfect thesis statement. So just keep that in mind. Don't put too much pressure on yourself this week, but hopefully you'll be able to write a really solid thesis. And of course, if you guys have questions, you know what to do. Send me an email.